This is the Mavic 4 Pro, and this is the Air 3S. You would think that the Mavic 4 Pro beats the Air 3S in every way, but there are a couple of areas that the Air 3S actually beats the Mavic 4 Pro, including in some image quality. As I was testing these two drones head-to-head, I thought the Mavic 4 Pro would beat the Air 3S in almost every area except for maybe one. But I was surprised to find that in one area in the image quality department, the Air 3S actually beats the Mavic 4 Pro. But before we jump into that, you need to know I bought and paid for both of these drones full price. This is not a sponsored video. Let's jump into image quality. When it comes to video specs on the main cameras, the Air 3S has a 1-inch sensor and a 24mm field of view. It's capable of 4K up to 60 frames a second in normal video modes, and then some slow motion modes, which we'll cover in a minute. And the Mavic 4 Pro has a 4/3 sensor, which is capable up to 6K 60 frames a second, and it has a 28mm field of view. And that's important to pay attention because this is one of the areas where the Air 3S actually beats the Mavic 4 Pro. While 6K definitely beats out 4K on the Air 3S, it definitely gives you more resolution. You can crop in up to 150%. I was surprised to see that, especially once you've put it on YouTube, it might be hard to see some of the differences. But one of the biggest differences between these two drones is that the Mavic 4 Pro can shoot in full D-Log on all of the cameras. And that is a big advantage if you're trying to match this drone up to other cameras that you might be shooting with on the ground. Because D-Log is a much flatter color profile and it gives you a lot more leeway to be able to push and pull the colors in post. And if you get the creator combo, then you also get the all-eye option, which has a huge bitrate of 1200 and also gives you 422 color sampling space. But if we're just comparing D-Log-M to D-Log-M, there really isn't that much of a difference. I feel like the Mavic 4 Pro definitely has more dynamic range. As you can see here, it just does. It's a larger sensor and it should. And we will cover low light here in just a few minutes. But overall, like both of these drones are going to give you some really fantastic image quality in a lot of different situations. Now, when it comes to slow motion video, both of these drones do shoot 4K 120, but the Air 3S will actually shoot HD up to 240, so 1080p up to 240, where the Mavic 4 is limited to 4K 120 or Cinema 4K 120, and it does crop in quite a bit. Now, I think the quality is pretty good on both, so you know, depending on how you film a lot of slow motion, that might be an issue. And this is one of the areas where the Air 3S beats the Mavic 4 Pro, in my opinion, and some of that will depend on your use case, is that the 24mm compared to the 28mm is a pretty substantial field of view difference. I much prefer the 24mm field of view. Not to say that you can't back up and get the same field of view. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes you're in tight spaces, and that can be an issue. But when it comes to the main camera, the Mavic 4 has two big advantages. And one is that the main camera has a variable aperture. The Air 3S is fixed, and that means that you can make more adjustments on the fly. You don't have to change ND filters as often. And it has 1/3 stop increments on the ISO as opposed to full stop increments on the Air 3S. And then, of course, both of these drones have the 70mm camera, which is a 3x on the Air 3S or 2.5x on the Mavic 4 Pro. And here they are actually basically exactly the same. Same sensor, same specs. You can film 4K 120 on both of them, and you get this really nice, beautiful, it's actually one of my favorite cameras to shoot with on the drone because you just get some really spectacular imagery, compressing and bringing the background a little closer to subject and making it feel a little larger, true to life, and just giving you something other than that normal, pretty wide angle field of view on drones. The one difference is that the Mavic 4 Pro will, of course, film in full D-Log, not just D-Log-M, in that mode or in that camera. So you do get a little extra flexibility and a little bit more dynamic range if you're using the Mavic 4 Pro, and especially if you're trying to match it up to other cameras. But a way that the Mavic 4 Pro is much better than the Air 3S is that it has a third camera that's 168mm. And if you're wondering what the differences in the field of view are or the focal lengths are, these are the same exact shot flown by waypoints, and you can see here how much different it makes your footage look. And the Mavic 4 Pro having that third camera with that extremely long focal length gives you the option to be able to create some really wild and really stunning imagery. It's a really tight camera, and it actually does track really well. Like, I have never been able to circle myself like this well with the Mavic 3 on its 166mm camera, but the Mavic 3 actually does a good job. Now, it won't active track in this mode, but it will actually track a subject that's stationary, which is super helpful if you're trying to capture wild orbiting shots like this. And now that shoots 4K up to 60 frames a second or 4K 100 frames a second in slow motion, and it will film in full D-Log, that camera is going to be useful for me. I used it before, but now that it shoots in full D-Log, I definitely am going to use that camera quite a bit more on the Mavic 4. So one of the differences between these two drones is how they both shoot vertical video. Right now I'm flying the Air 3S, and with the Mavic 4, if you rotate the screen, it goes into vertical mode. Now the Air 3S doesn't do that. Maybe DJI will add that as a firmware upgrade in the future, but right now it's not able to. But the other difference is too that while the Mavic 4 can both rotate the entire gimbal over and give you a full 6K full sensor vertical video, even though the range of motion is very limited in that mode. You still get the full sensor readout, but you can actually shoot full 4K vertical video without rotating the gimbal and still get full range of motion out of the gimbal by going into the 9x16 mode. Whereas on the Air 3S, it's going to be a little different. You're going to go into the settings and you're going to go down to 2.7K 9x16 mode, and then it's going to crop in the sides like the Mavic 4 does, but you're only getting 2.7K out of that. So, you know, if you do a lot of vertical video shooting, that might be something to consider. Honestly though, for most social media, like 2.7K is more than enough. And that brings us to low light. Now, it's the summer here in Alaska, so I don't get a lot of low light, but I did go out at like 3 in the morning when it was about as dark as it gets to test the low light here. And they both do a great job in low light, but the Mavic 4 Pro, because of that larger sensor on its main camera, does better. But here you can see walking through the different ISO levels in the same exact settings, all the way from 100 up to 12,800, just to get an idea of what they look like. So if you shoot a lot of low light or film a lot of low light, then the Mavic 4 Pro by far is going to be a much better drone. That brings us to photo quality. Now the Mavic 4 Pro has that 4/3 inch sensor that's 25 megapixels, but because it's quad Bayer, you can take up to 100 megapixel stills. But to be honest, I haven't seen a huge difference between the 100 megapixel stills and the 25 megapixel stills. The one difference I have seen is that you get better dynamic range in the 25 megapixel still mode, so I would stick with that if you're going to do a lot of photo work. The Air 3S, on the other hand, has a 12 megapixel and then a 50 megapixel mode, which is the same thing. It's a quad Bayer sensor that is dividing up those pixels to give you more detail. Now the Air 3S actually does give you a fair amount more detail compared to the 12 megapixels, but it is also the same deal where you're losing a little bit of dynamic range when you do those photos. So, but side by side, the photos, I mean, they both look really good. And if you're just posting on social media, either one of them would do well. If you're wanting to do a lot of photo work, the Mavic 4 is definitely going to be the better drone because it has an actual 25 megapixel sensor. So you will get a fair amount more detail in that 25 megapixel mode. You can see here just how much more detail is in that mode when you're shooting 12 megapixels or 25 megapixels. If we zoom in, like, there's a fair amount of difference. The Mavic 4 is definitely a better photo drone. And then if we switch and use the 70 millimeter camera, you're gonna get something very similar, 12 megapixels or 48 megapixels on both of these. And here, even though on paper they're basically the same, except for DJI says the new camera on the Mavic 4 has better dynamic range, I found there to be a significant difference in detail and sharpness. So they definitely updated the optics as well, because if you look here, when we zoom in a bunch, the Mavic 4 looks considerably better than the Air 3S does. One thing to note on the photos is, especially if you get the creator combo or if you're using the internal memory on the Mavic 4, it writes to that internal memory super quick. Whereas the Air 3S, if you're doing the 12 megapixel stills, it writes pretty quickly to the SD card or to the internal memory. But if you're doing the 50 megapixel stills, it takes a minute to write to those larger photos. Also, I don't know if you can see it, but it's June 1st and it's just lightly snowing up here. Yeah. Stop it. I'm ready for summer. And this brings us to something that DJI has been implementing since the Air 3S, which is this focus tracking system. Essentially, it's sort of like continuous autofocus, but on the drone, which is super useful and really welcome when you're filming or shooting photos on the tighter focal lengths. On the wider focal lengths, it doesn't make as big a difference, except actually with the Mavic 4, because you have a larger sensor, you actually do get some depth of field when you're close to a subject. And because you're using a focus tracking system now, you can actually pull away and have everything fall into focus as you back off. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying or getting value out of this video, then consider subscribing. I go out and test and compare equipment in the most real-world conditions I can find here in Alaska where I live, and I give you tips and tutorials on how to use it. That brings us to battery life, user interface, flight feeling characteristics, speeds, all of that. The Mavic 4 is now capable of about 55 miles an hour. Actually, the Mavic 4 is now capable of 60 miles an hour in normal conditions. You just have to go into the gain and expo settings for sport mode and set it to the max speed of 60 miles an hour. Let's see what we can do here. All right, we're hitting 52. 52. Come on, baby. 53. 54. Now, I did go out and actually get pretty close to 60 miles an hour after I changed that setting. I just wasn't aware of it at the time that I was recording that speed test. Now, I actually have gotten the Air 3S up to 60 miles an hour, which is what they say the top speed is, if you have a small tailwind. The one thing about the Air 3S is that it is snappy. Like, it just launches. They do say for that 60 miles an hour that you need a little bit of a tailwind, and we do not have that today. Well, maybe a little bit. So I am hitting 50. Like, that's pretty good. 48. Yeah, I'm not going to hit the full 60 today. Now, aside from their top speeds, both drones share a max ascent speed of 22 miles an hour and a max descent speed of 22 miles an hour, which means you can get to places and be in position insanely fast. Now, in battery life, on paper at least, the Mavic 4 gets about 5 more minutes than the Air 3S does. In reality, you're not going to get anywhere near that long, but the Air 3S does have really great battery life. The Mavic 4 Pro has about 5 to 8 more minutes depending on how you're flying, so you will get more flight time out of the Mavic 4. And that made me curious to see, because the Mavic 4 is much larger and much more powerful. So then I wanted to test the high wind speeds, and right near here there's a weather station that's reporting about 38 mile an hour winds. Feels like a good place to see if either one of these drones can handle this. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Holy crap. All right, well done, Air 3S. All right, that's pretty impressive. Now time for the Mavic 4. Oh my God. That's good job. Good job, Mavic, good job. Holy crap. I mean, the truth is that I've flown the Mavic 3 in 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, and I've flown the Air 3 in some really heavy winds too. So I knew they could handle it, but it is interesting to see which one handles it a little better. I definitely felt like the Mavic 4 just kept the footage looking a little more stable, where the Air 3S was struggling a little bit more because it is smaller and lighter. And I'm done. This is it. I'm out. And when it comes to intelligent flight modes and all of that, they both have master shots. They both have lots of quick shots. They both have great active tracking systems with auto modes to where it will kind of do whatever it thinks it should do. In my testing though, the Air 3S was a lot more aggressive about the movements it made, where the Mavic 4 Pro was a little bit more toned down, and you can see here that kind of got the Air 3S into trouble. But in that regard, they both have excellent obstacle avoidance, including a LiDAR system that's forward-facing, and that means they both have the GPS-free return to home. I should say no GPS return to home, where it can return to home in GPS-denied environments. But this is one area where the Mavic 4 Pro beats the Air 3S in that the Air 3S obstacle avoidance cameras need 1 lux, which is still insanely low, but the Mavic 4 Pro cameras only need 0.1 lux. So they are 10 times better, if I did the math right in my head. Now, when it comes to active track, both of these track really well, but I wanted to see how fast they would active track when you're just letting the drone kind of do everything. And here you can see that the Mavic 4 Pro active tracked a few miles an hour faster than the Air 3S was able to. And so if you active track a lot, that's definitely something to consider. Now, if you're just tracking a subject and you're flying the drone, you can actually active track really fast on both of these drones, but the Mavic 4 Pro definitely has a little bit of an advantage because it can hit 60 miles an hour without the need for a tailwind. But the biggest way that the Air 3S beats the Mavic 4 Pro, and why the Air 3S will still be part of my kit, especially when I'm doing stuff outdoors, is the size difference. There is a massive size and weight difference between these two drones. And if you're somebody like me who hikes in the mountains a lot or gets in and out of helicopters or small airplanes a lot, then the Air 3S is a huge win over the Mavic 4 Pro. Even though I love everything else about the Mavic 4 Pro, the sheer portability is going to be a huge win for the Air 3S. And I think if you're in the European Union, especially, the Air 3S fits under the 900 gram category. And I'm not an expert on this, but that means you are way less restricted in where and how you can fly the Air 3S than something like the Mavic 4 Pro, which is a much heavier drone. One of the things I was really curious to try is the startup time between these two drones. Now, both of these have not been started since yesterday, so it's a cold start. It means they have to acquire GPS signal. All right, DJI Mavic 4. There is just barely enough room for this thing to sit on this here. And just like that, we're ready to go. Now, one of the things that's nice about the RC Pro 2 is that it can fly the Mavic 4, it can fly the Air 3S, and it can fly the Air 3 and the Mini 4 Pro. So that alone makes this remote really nice, but the fact that it has this super bright 7-inch screen, which is, today's not too much of an issue, but on a sunny day, it makes a huge difference. And even though, yes, it is bigger and thicker than the other remotes that DJI offers, I feel like it's worth it just because of the extra benefits that you get. And because you can switch between aircraft, it's pretty simple that if there's no aircraft connected to the remote, you hit the connect to aircraft, you can select the different aircraft you want to go to. We're going to hit the aircraft, and then you hit confirm. Takes just a few seconds to switch the firmware, hit OK, and then we're going to be ready to go. But to be fair, I'm going to power this all the way down. All right, Air 3S. Again, starting with 0 satellites. The one thing I will say is when the Mavic 4 locks onto satellites, it locks onto a lot of satellites, and it does so really quickly. And there we go for the Air 3S. So that was actually a lot closer than I thought time-wise. The one caveat to that is that if you're flying with the RC2, this can be a little slower on startup than the RC2 Pro or RC Pro 2. So that might slow you down, but I was kind of surprised to see that the Air 3S actually beat the Mavic 4 Pro in how fast it started up and grabbed GPS lock. But the Mavic 4 Pro had more satellites, which means it's more accurate when it did have GPS lock. So here's an audio test. The drone is an arm's length away from me, and it is about 1.5 meters, 5-ish feet from the Pocket 3. Right now you're listening to lapel, which is right here. But this is what it sounds like in the Pocket 3 directly. Now, of course, I'm between the drone and the camera, so I'm a little closer, but this is how loud it is. Really not bad. And this is the Mavic 4. Same distance, arm's length, 1.5 meters, 5-ish feet away from the Pocket 3. Right now you're listening to lapel right here. But then if we switch to the Pocket 3 directly, this is what you'd hear. I'm between the drone and the camera, talking to the camera, but it's, yeah, pretty similar. But one thing you'll notice that's a big difference is the pitch. The Mavic 4 has a much lower pitch, a lower frequency pitch, which makes it a little easier to listen to or be close to, where the Air 3S has a little bit of a higher pitch. It also, that lower pitch tends to disappear a lot faster when the drone goes away. That brings us to what is probably the biggest determining factor for most of us, and that is price. Across the board, the Air 3S is pretty much half the price of the Mavic 4 Pro, whether you get the standalone combo or the Fly More combo or the Creator combo. It doesn't matter. It's pretty much going to be half the price for the Air 3S. Now, for some people, that might be worth it. For me, as somebody who flies drones and makes a really big portion of my living using drones, it absolutely is, because it's a tool that makes income for my business. The Air 3S probably actually is the best drone for most people. It's more portable. It's easier to fly in most places. It's snappy. It responds well. Great obstacle avoidance. And so if you're wondering between the two, yeah, the Air 3S is probably where it's at for almost everybody. And if you're wanting to pick up either one of these drones, there are links in the description. Those are affiliate links. They help me make videos like this and support the channel. But next, you're going to want to check out this video right here where I compare the Mavic 3 to the Mavic 4. Big differences there. I'll see you over there. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream, which happens most Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We can have more of a conversation. I can answer questions that maybe I didn't get to in this video. I'll see you again soon in the next one. Cheers.